this, he broke a vase, or like, yeah, he's doing this and that, and this wrong thing. And they're just like, dude, what the heck? I thought we were bros. Like, what's happening here, So that's kind of what Joseph did to his brothers. And so his brothers, being older, and they actually resented him. Do you guys know what resented means? It means to, like, hate him. They hated Joseph. His older brothers hated Joseph. Let me see here. So Jacob is actually Joseph's dad. Okay, so Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So Jacob, whenever he was probably about, 90 or 100 years old by this time. And so the father actually gave him a son named Joseph. So Jacob actually had 2 wives. One, she was just like, I guess, something had happened to the point where he shouldn't have been with her, but he got with her somehow. They had 9 kids, and he was like, whatever, this is great, but at the same time it isn't because it's not what the father wants. So then he actually wanted to have a relationship with this lady named Sarah. That was his second wife. Her name was Sarah, and he was like, oh my gosh, let her have a kid because I want her to have my kid. And all of a sudden the father kind of came upon Sarah and made her bear a child. All right, and so that was Joseph. So that's why Jacob loved Joseph more than any of the other kids, just because he was like, this is the one that I got when I was old. This is totally God. So, because Jacob loved Joseph so much, he actually made him like this really expensive coat. He was like, here you go, here's an expensive coat. It's full of color. This is all just for you. And so his brothers realized that, that Jacob loved him more than them. So they were like, man, what's going on? I hate you just because, your dad loves you more than he loves us. Like, what's the deal? Why? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So, because of that, let me see here. Okay, so one day Jacob had made a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. Verse 4, but his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind word to him. Okay, so at this point, his brothers hate Joseph. They're like, man, you think that you own everything because you're the youngest, Dad loves you, and we can't do anything to you because Dad loves you, and we'd get in trouble if we did anything. Right? Is that how you guys are with like your younger siblings? Try to do something bad to them, and your parents are like, whoa, they're younger than you. What are you doing? Right? Right? Okay. All right. So one night Joseph had a dream, and he told his brothers about it. They hated him more than ever. Listening to this dream, he said, we were out in the field tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly, my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed down before mine. His brothers responded, so you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us? And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. So by this time, Joseph he was able to interpret dreams, right? So he was able to tell you about what your dream meant and everything like that, just because that's the gift that the father gave him. So, with that being said, his brothers were like, so you're telling me that we're going to bow down before you, and all this stuff is going to happen, and you're going to reign over us like a king. And he was like, well, I mean, yeah, in a way. And they're just like, no, I hate you. That's not going to happen. Like, say, for example, okay, who has a younger sibling? You have a younger sibling, right? Mm-hmm. Say, like, what if your sibling was like, hey, man, you're going to bow down before me because I'm going to reign over you. Like, you'd be like, dude, what? No way. Like, no, I don't think so, man. I'm older than you. I don't think so. So that's what Joseph told his brothers. So, of course, his brothers are going to be pissed off, right? And be like, dude, you don't know me. Like, you don't own me, whatever. I'm my own person. So, if you guys continue reading the book, stuff happens to the point where, I'll just summarize everything. Okay, so Joseph tells his brothers what happened, right? And they're like, oh yeah, you're going to bow down before me. And so Joseph was like, so his brothers hated him for that. So they actually took him, and they were going to put him in like a well, kind of, and just leave him there, just to die. But then they saw like these slave traders, and they're like, oh man, slave traders, let's go ahead and just sell him. Let's sell him. And so they're like, yeah man, that's a good idea. So they sold their brother. And so their brother owned nothing, because he was a slave now. So they gave him to like these people. They were just like, yeah, we'll take him off your hands for 150 shillings. Here you go. Boom, 150 bucks. So they took his brother. He became a slave, and now he owned nothing. He had like this awesome robe that was all cut up now because his brothers were like, oh yeah, Joseph died. Look, here's the robe, just to show you proof. So his dad was distraught. They were like, oh my gosh, Joseph's dead. My son, he's gone. So now Joseph is over here as a slave, doing what he has to do, and out of that, it turns out that he actually goes and he finds this guy named Potiphar. Potiphar is one of the high-ranking officials in that Egyptian era over there. And let me see if I can find it. Give me a second. Okay. Okay, sold. Let me see here. Sorry guys, give me a second. almost everything. Give me a second, guys. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. Okay, so Potiphar was an officer of Pharaoh. And so Potiphar was the captain of the palace guard. And so pretty much before I get into Potiphar, before we get into that, so with everything that's going on, we're talking about purpose today, all right, about what your purpose is here in this life, right? So for me, we're going to push everything towards me really quick. With me, when I was going to school, I did school for like about 3 years, in college, and I was like, I don't know what I want to do, I'll just go into business and just, it's comfortable for me just because this is where I feel like I need to be, and this is, I'm just doing business and that's it. And so I thought, business would sustain me, business would be what I wanted to do. And as time went by, I realized that, man, I was so comfortable with what I was doing. I was like, man, this isn't what, the Father wants from me, And I thought, this was my purpose, was just to go to school. How like the school tells you go to school, you get a job, and you go back to school, just to get a better job after that, right? So that's society. Society tells you that you should, go to school, keep on going to school, get a good job, once you have that, that diploma or whatever you get an awesome job. Well, I was like, you know what, that sounds comfortable, so I'm going to do what everybody else is doing. But in reality, that's not what the Father wants. You guys are unique. You guys are individuals. We are all made for a different purpose. We all have something to do. We all have people to talk to that other people can't talk to, just because that's who we are. So, when I was going to college, I was like, you know what, I'm comfortable here. I like it here. I like what I'm doing. But then all of a sudden, the Father's just going to come and he wiped everything off for me. He's like, no, that's not what you're going to do, Because that's not what I called you to do. That's not your purpose. Your purpose, I knew what my purpose was, I knew what I had to do, which was come here, help my dad out with the church, and become the youth pastor. And I was like, okay, well, that's what I have to do. And I knew it, but I didn't want to. So I was doing everything I could to run away from my purpose, to run away from what I wanted to do. And so I thought me going to school and being comfortable was the best way to do it. But then, after a while, the Father is just to mess up your plans and do what He wants to do. All right? So that's kind of how we timed with Joseph, though. That's where I timed with Joseph, right? So Joseph, he had this dream, I had a dream that I wanted to do, I saw the vision of what I want to do, which is I actually want to travel the world and, do some music or something like that, right? And so I actually had a band that we were doing that kind of stuff, we were about to start traveling, we had recorded a CD, and I was like, yeah, man, this is what I'm supposed to be, this is totally it, this is me. But then all of a sudden, I realized that it wasn't me. That's not what I had to be doing at that point in time. So, no longer am I in a band. Now I'm teaching you guys, which is phenomenal. I love it. I love teaching you guys, all right? So, I left the band, and now I'm here. And the crazy thing is that now I'm about to raise up a band for you guys so that we can actually start worshiping as a unit, as a whole. All right? And so that's the plan that the Father has. So everything always happens for a purpose. In His timing, everything is just perfect. He has perfect timing with everything. You guys understand that? All right. So with Joseph, he had this dream, that he was going to get, his parents and his brothers were going to bow down to him. He had this dream, but now he's a slave. So how is that dream ever going to come to pass? Think about it. He was probably sitting there as a slave thinking, man, I had this dream, but how is this dream going to come to life? How does it become a reality? Like, man, God, I thought you had my back. Like, what's going on? So he was probably really confused at that time too. So then Joseph was sold, to a guy named Potiphar. And so when Potiphar bought him, he was like, hey man, you're mine. You don't own anything. I own you. This is your life now. So now we read about Potiphar when he was there. Okay, when Joseph was taken to Egypt, the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Potiphar was captain of the guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. So, pretty much, whenever Joseph was there with Potiphar, everything he touched, everything that he did, just succeeded, like overabounded, like what he wanted to do. It was just like it was like he was like shut off, and everything that he touched became a reality. Became so much more than what Potiphar had expected. So Joseph, doing all this stuff, being in charge of everything now, because Potiphar was like, hey man, everything you touch, man, seems to get, seems to multiply by 10. So he's like, you know what, I'm going to put you as my second in command. You're going to be my right-hand man above all the slaves, above everybody. So you'll be telling them what to do now. So now he's not a slave anymore. Now he's like in second command, with Potiphar in his house. So he runs everything, tells people what to do, where to go, doing all this stuff. And so the father had positioned him in that area. So, even though everything had seemed bad for Joseph, he was a slave, didn't own anything, but yet he was prosperous because the father was with him. Because Jesus was with him, or because the father was with them, he made everything that Joseph touched become multiplied. And so that's the way that it is with our lives too, with our purpose. Is that anything that we will touch now, because the Father is with you, is that it will multiply because he's with you. You're going to succeed because he's with you. So anyway, so then, Joseph was doing like really great at Potiphar's house, and then all of a sudden, his wife, the Bible says that Joseph is like a really good looking guy, right? He was like good looking, all the girls were like, hey, what's up? What's the word? So Potiphar's wife saw him and was like, hey, Joseph, let's get it on, and he was like, whoa, you're my master's wife. I can't do that. Potiphar's your husband. I'm not going to do that. I'm just not going to do it. And so he actually had a jacket on at the time. And so he was like, no, I'm out of here. I'm not doing this. I'm gone. And because nobody else was there in the house, so as he's leaving and he's taking off running, she grabs his jacket and takes it off of him. And he just books it. He books it. And so she's like, you know what? Since I couldn't get him, and, since I'm just like a horrible person, I'm going to go ahead and, yell and say that you raped me. So she yells, right? She's like, oh my gosh, blah, 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 what happened? And so all these slave people and everybody come over to her and they're like, oh my gosh, what happened? She was like, well, Joseph just tried to rape me. He tried to, get with me, and he took off running. And I have this coat right here just to show you the proof. And they were like, okay, well, yeah, we'll definitely get him. So Potiphar finds out about it the next day. Throws him in jail. So now he's back at the bottom again. So he's probably thinking, man, Jesus, you said that I was going to have like this dream, my brothers were going to bet on before me, so was my dad and everything, and what the heck? Now I'm back in jail. So he was in jail for about, I don't know, he was in jail just for a while. Like he was 17 when all this happened, right? He was 17. So anyways, he gets thrown in jail, and then these two guys get thrown in jail with him. Like a few years later, they get thrown in jail. It was a cook, and it was a cupbearer. The cupbearer was actually the person that, held the cup for Pharaoh, would help him drink whatever the heck he had, probably wine. Anyways, so these guys get thrown in jail with him. And so they get thrown in jail, and the next day, the very next night, they have these dreams about, something really weird. They're like, yeah, I had like this really weird dream. I'm not sure if anybody can interpret it, because I'm just really confused as to what it means. And so, I'll read that to you. If you guys want to go to Genesis 40.
So is it about like cows?
That's coming. That's coming. Yes, that's with Pharaoh. That's right. That's with Pharaoh. Let me see here. Okay, so verse 40, Genesis 40, verse 5. While they were in prison, Pharaoh's cupbearer and a baker each had a dream one night, and each dream had its own meaning. When Joseph saw them the next morning, he noticed that they both looked upset. Why do you look so worried today? He asked them. And they replied, we both had dreams last night, but no one can tell us what they mean. And then Joseph was like, interpreting dreams is God's business, Joseph replied, so go ahead and tell me your dreams. So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. In my dream, he said, I saw a great vine in front of me. The vine had 3 branches that began to bud and blossom, and soon it produced clusters of ripe grapes. I was holding Pharaoh's wine cup in my hand, so I took a cluster of grapes and squeezed the juice into the cup. Then I placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. And then Joseph said, this is what the dream means. Joseph said, the 3 branches represent three days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift you up and restore you to your position as chief cupbearer. And please remember me, and do me a favor when things go well for you. Mention me to Pharaoh, so he might let me out of this place. For I was kidnapped from my homeland, the land of the Hebrews, and now I'm here in prison, but I did nothing to deserve it. When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given the first dream such a positive interpretation, he said to Joseph, I had a dream too. In my dream, there were 3 baskets of white pastries stacked on my head. You guys know what pastries are? They're like little cakes. So like little cakes right on top of this in a basket. All right, you guys got that? On my head. This is what the dream means, Joseph told it. Wait, I'm sorry. 3 baskets, okay, stacked on my head. The top basket contained all kinds of pastries for Pharaoh, but the birds came and ate them from the basket on my head. This is what the dream means, Joseph told him. The 3 baskets also represent 3 days. 3 days from now, Pharaoh will lift you up and impale your body on a pole. Then the birds will come and peck away at your flesh. So, in other words, he was going to die, and so the Pharaoh was going to lift him up, take him out of jail, and just kill him, and put him on a pole just so everybody could see him, and the birds would just eat his flesh. So he was like,